Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door Net Admin. Let's talk networking nonsense, because I had some stuff this week that just made me go, huh? What? Why is this? Let me set the stage first. One of our newer clients has a switched network that, well, we'll say that their former provider reportedly does not believe in VLANs. As if VLANs were something that you had to take on faith. This is technology. It's either there or it's not. Fine. But they don't believe in VLANs, so they're like, okay, so in order to separate the various parts of your network, we're going to have to duplicate all of the equipment through the building. That's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have a separate switch for data and a separate switch for cameras. And we're going to have 2 switches, one for each of these networks everywhere we go. And that's cool. It's not. They're all unmanaged switches, which means that you can't log into them to check them. You can't troubleshoot them. They either work or they don't, and you kind of faff around with it to figure out what's going on, if you can figure out what's going on. So this is not acceptable for this network. When the client came to us, we're like, yeah, we can do this all better. And bless their souls, the client was like, you mean better is possible? Yes, better is possible. So we went, okay, we need to put a bunch of new equipment in. We want these to be managed switches so that we can log into them and manage them appropriately. And we know that we have cameras. We know we have wireless access points. We know we have some data. Okay, cool. This is not a project that I have been deeply involved with. Mostly it's been somebody else's, site to manage. But I was asked to look over the list of new equipment. And there were some things that just didn't make a lot of sense to me. When you look at the list of new equipment, the quote with prices and everything, you go, okay, so previously we had a whole bunch of 8-port unmanaged switches. Yeah. Let's get rid of those. And then we're going to have a bunch of 16-port switches. Okay. 22 switches. And the price is somewhere in the $86,000 range for 22 new switches. And you go, wow. On the one hand, if that's what the client needs in order to do the work, then that's just what they need. But let's dig into this and take a look at it. Okay, so first thing I notice is all of the switches are being replaced. All of them. Now, remember, we had separate switches for cameras and data, but we can put VLANs in place. And if you have an 8-port switch and an 8-port switch, why wouldn't you just merge the 2 of those and use VLANs like any sensible network architect would do? Okay, so that's a question. I have no idea how full these switches are. They might be completely chock-a-block full. They might be all completely empty. I don't know. Except I do know for some of them, because some of the old switches are marked not in use or unused. But they're being upgraded too. If they were an 8-port that wasn't in use, now that's being replaced with a 16-port. If it was a 24-port that was not in use, now it's being replaced by a 48. And you go, okay, but if the 24 is not being used at all, then why do we need to replace it with a 48 port. I don't know that either. The switches are all not of different brands, but they're different management types. And by that, what I mean is some of these are small business switches, Catalyst 1300s, good type of switch to use. We use them all the time. They have a web interface. Like many managed switches, you just log into them and do what you need to. Some of these are Catalyst 9200s or 9300s. Also a great model of switch. We use them at a few sites where there are actually significant requirements that require the use of those level of switches. It's not something that I would put everywhere. That's fine. Maybe we have those needs here. I don't know. But I noticed something about the 9300s. With the Catalyst 9000 series, typically speaking, the SKUs, the actual part numbers, will end with -E or -A. -E is essentials, layer 2 switching essentially. -A is advantage, and it adds some of your additional layer 3 features like static routing and other routing protocols that you can use. Cool, fine. These were -M. I've never seen -M before. And when I looked it up, it's Meraki. More research tells me, okay, yeah, these switches, you can use them as regular Catalyst 9000 series switches through the command line, or you can load a special customized version of firmware that allows them to connect to a Meraki dashboard. These -Ms come with that. Okay. So theoretically, I could buy these and then convert them back to using them the way that the other 9000 series switches work? Yes, but to do so requires contacting Meraki support, and then they wipe all firmware on the switch. Completely gone. And there's no operating system on the switch left whatsoever. And then you, the technician, have to manually put a new version of firmware on there and use that. That seems like a lot of effort to go through. And it's not all of the 9000 series switches. It's only the 9300 switches that have this Meraki firmware. The 9200 switches on the list don't. So that's 3 different management methods in these new switches. Some are web managed, some are managed via SSH, the same way that we would do anywhere, and some specifically require the Meraki dashboard. Why? I don't know. Keep reviewing it. Some of these switches in the main comms room, essentially, the central heart of the network, you could say, they're all 10 gigabit. Cool. And I have nothing against 10 gig. 10 gig is good. They're 24 port switches. They have all 10 gig. All 24 ports run at 10 gig. Cool. But they have no PoE. And one of these 3 switches is for cameras, and the other one is for wireless access points. Kind of cool that you could run your cameras at 10 gigabit, but you can't turn them on because there's no power. And you kind of have to ask, how fast is this port going to run when the device isn't turned on because there's no power? So, okay, there's a lot of questions being raised by this list of new switches that is very expensive. So I've never actually been on site. So I asked for, pictures. Hey, do people have pictures of the equipment? Can I actually get a look at what these are and how everything is set up? And I do. So for example, in one particular switching room, there are 3 switches. There is an 8 port with like 6 ports full. There is another 8 port with 5 ports full. and there's a 24 port. It's not doing anything. On the sheet, it says it's a third 8-port switch that is not doing anything. That's not true. It's actually a 24-port switch that's not doing anything. It's not plugged in. It's not plugged into power. There's no network cables in it. And yet for new switches, there are 3 16-port switches going in here. But I only have 11 ports in use total. Why do I need 3 16-port switches in here? I don't get it. All the other rooms are much the same thing. There's, a few ports here, a few ports there, a few ports here, a few ports there. And it's not adding up to me. I don't understand why we've got all of this brand new equipment being spec'd. The customer has not seen it yet, but I don't understand why we're speccing all of this. I also don't understand why we seem to be thinking that some of these switches will be stacked because they're labeled master and slave. I would personally say primary and secondary, but master and slave is the traditional way of referring to these. But there's no equipment spec to actually connect the two together. And you're going to need a way to connect them together. If they're Catalyst 9000 series, you actually need a stacking kit to do that. No stacking kits are spec'd. And on small business switches, the Catalyst 1300s, you're going to need stacking cables. Again, there are none of those spec'd. So how is this supposed to come together? I was asked, hey, can you maybe revise this list? Okay, sure. I am a network architect. I am a network administrator. I'm a network engineer. But I'm not the technician for this site. I've never been here physically. So, yeah, I can revise the list based on the photographs that I have of the equipment, port counts, and tell me what my goals are for the network. Are we expecting cameras and wireless access points to be connected at 10 gigabit? No. Okay, cool. We are planning on doing 10 gigabit backbones from switch to switch. Okay, yep, we can do that. And then, my goal is to make sure that if you need multiple switches in a location, stack them. Then you only need one IP address to manage that logical device rather than having many fragmented switches, each one of which you need to touch individually in one location. Okay. So I go through it. I go through the list and I eventually come out with, okay, so for example, the example of the switching room I gave with 6, 5, and then an unused unit. Yeah, if we only need 11 ports, let's just put a single 16-port switch in there, not 3. A single 16-port switch, that's 11 ports in use, 5 still spare. That's like a 30% margin for future growth. Let's do that. Let's not do 3 16-port switches here. That I just don't see a reason for that. And I also was told the client really can't afford to do full Catalyst 9000. That's fine. I can just spec the 1300s and stack those as appropriate. When all was said and done, my revised list was down to 11 switches instead of 22. And the cost was in the range of $20,000 instead of $86,000. And I had included the various equipment necessary to actually connect these switches together. And nice thing to note is we only really needed to connect switches in one location, in that central comms room, the central area where everything else branched out from. That was the only place that had enough switch density, that had enough port density to warrant actually stacking the equipment. Everything else was okay, because, hey, if I need two 16-port switches, why am I getting two 16-port switches? I can just get a 48-port and be done with it. It helps that that network was built with all 8-port switches, so that I can just say, hey, we're just going to upgrade it to 16, 24, or 48, however many we need, and that's good enough. So, that's something that didn't make sense. I was not expecting the difference between the original list and my revised list to be quite so significant. I still don't know why the original list was built the way it was. I'm sure there was a reason somehow, but I don't know what it was. Regardless, I was asked to do a revised list. I did a revised list, and that's what it was. But it's one of those things where you go, I don't know how we got here. I don't know why things are the way they are. Which, yeah, that can be a question that we just don't understand sometimes. Just is what it is. What I also had a similar, I don't understand this, except it was not with a network. It was with an actual desktop level machine, where somebody had said, oh, well, we'll need a machine, make sure you get a machine. They did not specify, get one of the standardized machines. They assumed that the person that they were talking to would know there's a standard system, get it. They didn't. And they didn't ask if there was a standard either. They just went and got something that they thought was good enough. Turned out it was good enough for half of what needed to be done. So then you go, okay, well, how do we work this from here? Okay. And it took me a little bit to figure out the best way of dealing with it, but we'll deal with that too. So, what's the moral of the story? Well, in this case, there's not so much a moral. I'm not here to moralize on this. It's just a story of things that don't make sense and trying to make sense of it all. If I was going to make suggestions would be plan. I've said it before on this channel, and that part isn't changing at all. Plan ahead. Figure out why you're doing things and what parameters you're trying to meet before you do it. In this case, is it appropriate to go and say, I'm going to upgrade a switch that isn't even plugged in? Not unless you're going to use it. And if you're going to use it, make sure you've planned ahead for how you're going to use it. Communicate that. And if you're planning for a major deployment down the road, okay, fine, say so. If you can. Otherwise, yeah, just plan, and talk. Ask people, hey, is there a standard way of doing this? Don't assume that you know what the standard is, because there's lots of times when assuming does not work out very well. But most of us know that already. In fact, I'm pretty sure all of us know that already. Never mind. And that's basically all I've got for you this week. There you go. Another adventure from the life of a network administrator. Cool. If you have had adventures of your own, feel free to share with everybody. And if you have other thoughts on things that you'd like me to talk about or things you'd like me to demonstrate, feel free to let me know right down there in the comments section. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I am your next door net admin, and we will see you next time.